Thank you to Jay Odd, who became a new patron this week, as well as, I'm guessing it's Colorado Packer fan, who increased their pledge to become a gold patron. This episode is for you.
The Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course, spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talked about, you might want to come back later.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Rodrigo.
And I'm Steven, and you're listening to the Major Spoilers podcast, the podcast for pop culture and comic fans.
In this issue, do you remember? The first NSP of September, the artist formerly known as Sorcerer Supreme hits a milestone. Greg Brady is Spider-Man once more, and that's a massacre that starts with M, and that rhymes with T, and that stands for trouble, right here in Riverton City. Then all the superheroes form a union, and despite how that sentence sounds, things get realistic. Your humble MSPQ has decades of experience being slapped in the face with a dead fish of pop culture, but we'll tell you how fresh, how scaly, and even when to duck, because when the going gets tough, I forget the rest, but the Major Spoilers podcast is psychotic, but absolutely right, and it's on.
Welcome to issue 1140 of the Major Spoilers podcast. Thank you so much for downloading, checking us out this week. This week, we are starting to explore the world of Radiant Black with a series that you're like, wait a minute, that's related to Radiant Black? Oh, yes. Yes, it is, and we'll get into it later in the show. But first, let's do some reviews. Let's start with, some stuff that's coming out this week. Doctor Strange hits a milestone with issue 450. 450 episodes of Doctor Strange, never having to reboot the series, never creating other volumes or whatever. Congratulations, Doctor Strange, for hitting issue 450.
Okay, so Doctor Strange, Volume 7, number 450, is out today with art by pretty much everyone, writing by everyone. J. Michael Straczynski is in this, Christian Ward, Ashley Allen, Derek Landy, who I think is currently writing the book, Roger Stern, who used to write the book, tons of variant covers, tons and tons of artists in play, and it is really kind of wonderful for two reasons. One, it's $4.99. Now you may say, that seems like a lot. If an average comic now is for some reason $3.99, when I see a big celebration double-sized book at $4.99, I go, oh man, that's great. That Overton window just moved all by itself. But the one thing that I want to say about this particular issue that I find really wonderful is there's a phrase that I use a lot, answering a question that nobody asked. And there is a story, the lead story, in fact, in this issue, answering a question that nobody asked. And you may say to yourself, gosh, that sounds an awful lot like J. Mike Straczynski. And boy, would you be right. Normally, I would be snotty about this because it's J. Michael Straczynski. His work does not always resonate with me. And when it does, it usually resonates with rage. And that whole thing of let's explain the reason why Sally Jupiter wears one silk glove is one of my least favorite things about comics. That said, the first story in this book does that gimmick with a writer that I don't necessarily always care for, and some admittedly really, really smooth art by Lee Ferguson, and it's the most charming thing ever. We get to see Doctor Strange as the Sorcerer Supreme, rest in peace. We get to see him as a teacher working with magic and the kind of the trappings of the Strange Academy. There is a story here that goes back before the stories of Doctor Strange that we have seen. And you can always tell this because he's wearing his blue cloak. The blue cloak that he wore in his first 3 appearances, but it also features, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, one of the characters from Marvel The Lost Years from 1999. If you read the series, and it was stupid because it started with issue 12 and counted down to issue 1, and it basically implanted a whole generation of characters between Captain America's golden age and the modern age of Marvel. And it filled in some space there, answering questions that no one asked. And it's now been 29 years. So technically, there's still a big hole in between that generation and the modern age. But neither here nor there. We do have a really lovely bit of story with Kevin Nolan. We get appearances from Wong. We get a little bit of the Ancient One. We get a little bit of, I think everybody, not everybody, but many of the people who I feel are important or necessary to make me feel, hey, this is a Doctor Strange story, do put in an appearance here. You know, we have a new Doctor Strange on the horizon. Doctor Strange Volume 8, number 1 is coming up. I don't know if you guys knew that. He is currently the Sorcerer Supreme of Asgard. And you know what that means. Yeah, cool new costume with lots of textures and lines and things. But all in all, Roger Stern is here. J. Mike Straczynski is here. Doctor Strange is here. A lot of really talented artists are here. There is, you know who else is here? Corey Pettit. We don't talk about letterers enough. Corey Pettit is a really excellent letterer, and bad lettering can sink a good comic. Corey Pettit makes this work. 5 different stories, 5 different styles. Every single panel is cool. And it's not just a question of, is everything spelled right? It's where it belongs. It's not in the way. It's doing good stuff. This is a 3.5 slice of meatloaf, a comic book affair. Now, you may say, that seems low. No. That's actually quite good. 5 would be excellent. 5 would be amazing. This is quite good. 3.5 slices of meatloaf for Doctor Strange number 450, proving once again that Marvel will have its cake and eat it. You'll have a number 1 every 15 issues, but we'll also celebrate every single milestone with the big number before we go back to number 1.
They've been doing the
eh.
legacy numbering for a long time, which I know you don't care for them doing that, but you know, the dual numbering, they've been doing that for a long, long time. So this does not surprise me when they're like, hey, this is issue 450. When last week we had Sorcerer Supreme, you know, number 12. So, you know, it's just whatever Marvel, whatever they want to do to market and get people paying attention to something, I'm fine with.
I prefer the way Marvel does it with a big, big asterisk to the way DC does it, because DC, you know, relaunched all of their titles in 2011, and DC is literally trying to make it seem like that never happened and that Detective and Action are still in Volume 1, and they're not, you guys.
They did. Those were the ones that they didn't. Those 2 specifically, they didn't relaunch. I thought those 2 were the ones that they specifically kept the original numbering on.
Nope. Everything went back to number 1. Detective, Batman, Action, Superman all had number 1s in the New 52. And then they quietly transitioned Action back, I think, at 1000. And I can't remember when they did it with Detective, but legacy numbering is one of those things that I just have to live with. It's like people trying to explain to me what a skibbity toilet is. I mean, it's one of these things that you live, you learn, you realize that you don't know, you don't care, and that's perfectly fine. So,
yeah, what do you find out about what do you find out about 67?
I know about 67. I'm from the internet. I'm here to help. But more importantly, legacy numbering is fine as long as they don't do what they did with Captain America and count a bunch of issues that actually aren't Captain America's issues. And I'm never going to leave that alone. It's 2006 that this happened. The year is 2025. 19 years. I'm still holding a grudge. Still, you know, Marvel. And don't even ask me about Nathan Dixon, who pushed me in the sipping step
of Marvel Comics.
Yes,
out this week from Marvel Comics is Spider-Man 94 number 1. Now, you might be saying, wait, isn't this just a ripoff of what they did with the X-Men? Yes, of course. Obviously it is. This is a comic book continuation of the Spider-Man animated series from 94 to 98. And it essentially picks up right after, so at the end of the Spider-Man animated series, he's jumping into the Spider-Verse, which I forgot that the animated series was the introduction of the Spider-Verse canonically. And so that's kind of cool. But this takes place after Peter Parker and Mary Jane have come out of the Spider-Verse and they are back together again. And Mary Jane wants to get married to Peter, but Peter is like, I don't know. I was already married to you and you died. And she's like, yes, but that was a clone of me, so it doesn't count. And so that's kind of what a lot of this issue is wrapped around, is Peter trying to come to grips and to convince Mary Jane that, hey, listen, I'm having a hard time with this. But I guess we'll go ahead and get married anyway. And so that's nice. All the old characters are there. Aunt May is there. We have Mary Jane's, who is it, aunt? Her aunt that she lived with next door. Yeah, she's there as well. But then this issue also introduces us to two characters which I do not think have ever appeared in Spider-Man, the animated series 94 series. We get the introduction of Kane, and we also get the introduction of Morlun in this series. So Morlun is the big bad in at least this first story arc. I think this is only a 5-issue or 6-issue miniseries. I don't think that this is an ongoing, but we'll see what happens. J.M. DeMatteis is writing this. Jim Tao is doing the art, and I will say Tao's art is on brand with the animated show. And so for people that want that polo wearing Peter Parker and the yellow sweater and high boots Mary Jane, you're getting it in the pages of this comic. I think the Kane depiction is rather interesting. Morlun, you kind of know right away as soon as he first appears in his cocoon that, oh, this is Morlun. There's nothing really too much of a surprise here. So I don't think that that's like a major spoiler to know that that's who the big bad is in this arc. A couple things to do keep in mind when you do pick this up. Aunt May still doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So that is, going to cause some issues when Kane bursts into Aunt May's house and kidnaps Peter Parker. Of course, just like in the animated series, oh, the police show up. Oh, we found this guy wandering around a block away. Yeah, Spider-Man came and saved me. Was it interesting? I remember the first season of this Spider-Man animated series, and for some reason, I don't know why. I think I've got it figured out where the confliction comes from. But I always thought that this was a show that started in '88 for whatever reason. Because I remember watching a lot of the first season at my friend Mike's house, which would have been impossible because I would have been on one side of the state and he would have been on the other side of the state. So it would have been impossible for us to sit down and watch the Spider Slayer episodes and that kind of stuff. So every time I pick up this book or anytime I touch base with this particular Spider-Man animated series, I'm always thrown because someone will say Spider-Man 94, and I think of that horrible MTV 3D animated Spider-Man series, which some people really love, but I don't care for it.
Spider blood.
So it takes me a few minutes to always kind of readjust about where does this story fit into my Saturday morning cartoon watching. But once you settle in, this is pretty good. And if you're somebody that has never watched the Spider-Man 94 series, you're probably not going to care for this comic book at all. In fact, you're probably going to be like, okay, so where does this fit in the current either Dan Slott run or whoever's writing Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man right now? I forget who it is. Jason Aaron? I forget. So I would, if you've never watched that animated series and you never watched the series to completion, I would probably say skip this book because it is just like the 5 years later Legion that starts off expecting you to know everything about the Legion and have a deep lore cut. This one's kind of that same. It hits that nostalgia factor for certain people. That being said, if you are a nostalgia factor person, I had fun with this comic. I really did. I liked the introduction of Morlun. I kind of figured that's who it was going to be. I really like that. I like the battle with Kane. I like how Peter Parker defeated Kane, and I kind of want to see what happens in issue number 2. Spider-Man 94 number 1 is out this week from Marvel Comics. I'm giving it 4 slices of meatloaf. There you go. Rodrigo, you're going to jump ahead to next week because you can't live in this timeline. You must live in the future timeline.
Yes. Forever jumping forward into the future.
Never looking back, always moving forward. It's Rodrigo.
It's a me. Yes, so today I am reviewing It Killed Everyone But Me #1. Which is a great title. Written by RYAN PARROTT, artist is Letizia Cadonici. And this is a Matt Cave book. So this is a story about a realtor.
Yeah, that's right.
Who is trying to sell a house, but she's having trouble, and then the people in town don't really seem to like her. But of course, that is all because she was hanging out with her friends one day, and all of her friends died in horribly gruesome ways, but she was left alive and seemingly acquitted of, any potential involvement. Possibly because the acts were like too gruesome for, at the time she was a teenage girl, like to would require too much strength or something like that. I don't know. So she is contacted by a private detective, and she's like there because she's this does take place in roughly 2025. So of course, because she was involved in a gruesome thing, she's constantly being harassed by podcasters. And so she's like, oh no, I don't care. I'm not gonna do an interview. No, the family hired me to look this up because it's happening again. I wanted to know if you had any insight. And then she goes to talk to the thing that did it. But it's kind of implied, at least, that the thing that did that to her friends is not the same thing. We don't know what the thing is or what the things are, but we know there is actually some sort of supernatural critter doing this. I was very hooked by this. I am actually really interested. I really like the art. And I love me a Hannibal Lecter situation, where like you have the scary person in jail and they are helping you catch another scary person, right? So it's just classic storytelling there, lots to do. And a trope that doesn't get used as often as I'd like, to the degree or to the quality that I would like as well. So this is very promising to me. I'm gonna give it 4.5 slices of meatloaf. It is very gory. It's not. I guess it's not necessarily like photorealistic gore at all times, but there's a lot of blood in it. There's like the implication of a lot of like awful stuff happening, and you do see somebody who, like, while they're still alive, gets chopped up or hit or something happens to them so hard that you can see their bones. Some of their bones. Yeah, it's kind of gruesome, but that's what you're getting into. The if you look at the cover, it's like itself pretty spooky and gruesome. So yeah, I would say definitely check it out, and I'm very interested to see issue 2.
Hoy es el grito de los corderos, Rodrigo.
It's written by RYAN PARROTT, so you kind of had me there with that, since he did a lot of the Power Ranger stuff and a bunch of other stuff that I like. So I'm definitely going to check this out next week, September 10th, when it arrives. Listeners, if you are looking for more comic book reviews, head to majorspoilers.com. And if you want to talk about comics in general, head to our Discord server. There's a link in the show notes. The Discord server is absolutely free. We have a whole channel just dedicated to comic book talk, and we would love to see you show up over there today, right now. If you are not joined up, join up. Everybody will say hello to you. It's a wonderful community. It's the Major Spoilers Discord server. Got a question for you guys. So I have an older vehicle that has the ability to switch between two different light modes. One is kind of a more modern blue light mode, but the default is this kind of warm orangey glow that you get from, now it would be all LED stuff, but it's basically the little tiny incandescent bulbs, that orange glow. In the movie Alien, everything is little fluorescent bulbs behind the push buttons. In fact, Ridley Scott said that was one thing I never saw coming were LEDs. Otherwise, I would have made this all LED and everything would have looked super futuristic. And now it just looks retro futuristic. But because of the orange glow from the dashboard and the overhead lights and all the accents in this automobile that I have, I'm starting to have some yearnings for technology of days gone by, like a mini disc player, for example, or instead of listening to my iPhone with my Bluetooth headphones, I kind of want to walk around with a Walkman and listen to a mixtape. Do you guys ever get into a situation where you yearn for what would now be old or archaic technologies?
I'm a bad person to ask this because I don't know if you'd call it Steven might call it archaic. I spent like 15 hours playing my PlayStation 4 this weekend.
I wouldn't call that archaic. I'm talking about like stuff from like at least 20. Well, maybe PlayStation 4 is close to 20, but I don't think it's 20 years old. Things that are over 25 years old.
I do, and it's actually a very obvious example that I do just over and over and over. Down at the end of my block, I live on the outskirts of the city in one of those little rows of houses that are all the same and no one seems to care neighborhoods where they go, here's a pink one, here's a blue one, here's a gray one, but they're literally identical. At the end of my block is a guy. He has a very, very well-kept 1970 Chevrolet C10. It's the exact model, the long bed that I drove in college, with the exception of the fact that you may remember mine was two-tone brown, dark brown, and then tan with like the inlay stripe, and then the cab was tan. This one is red and white. And I remember that truck, and I think, no power seats, no power brakes, manual window cranks. The radio was crap. It literally had a manual choke, flipping little switchy things to try and adjust the heat. Just a monster pain in the butt compared to, the wonder that is my Phantom Cruiser. By the way, I call my new car the Phantom Cruiser. But every time I drive past that truck, I tell my wife or I tell my daughter or I tell whoever is in the car with me, when you get rich, because I know I'm not, buy that truck or one just like it and get it for me, because part of me wants that truck, the steel truck where you're just like, yep, if I get really bored, I can throw wood in the back and I can carry stuff around. If we have to move, God forbid, we have something we can move with. It's just, part of me on like this visceral level wants that specific model of truck for those rare occasions, maybe 3 times a year where I might need a truck, but I want to have it just in case. And I feel like no matter how much my cool Nissan with the Bluetooth and the little thing that breaks when I forget to, which by the way, that's disturbing when the car stops because you didn't. All of these wonderful safety apps, all of the cool computerized frimulemas, the thing where I'm coming out of the grocery store, I press a button to start it, I press a button to open the back door, I throw myself in the back, I get in, I press a button to tell it that I'm actually here, and then I drive away. No key, no nothing. All of that, wonderful, amazing. You give me that red truck at the end of the block, I will take it. I will take it, I will drive it, it will be my new car. I don't know why.
Rodrigo, what about you? Do you have a yearning for, 25-year-old plus technology?
Only in the sense that, so there's 2 things. One is from a practical standpoint, in that the streaming demon has betrayed us.
Right.
And now even if you pay it, it still shows you ads, which was part of the secret covenant. So I'm buying
physical media.
Physical media again, and probably gonna have to buy a Blu-ray player because my PS4 is old and busted. So we should probably just give it a rest. The other thing is that there is a fun tactile aspect to old technology. In fact, sometimes that itself is also practical. A lot of or a fair amount of cars had moved to touch screens, right? Because they're fancier and you can cram more information in there. But as it turns out, it's hard to manipulate a touch screen when you can't see it because it's all a uniform surface.
Right.
So cars that had gone to a touchscreen are now dialing it back literally to put dials and knobs back into the main console of your car, so that you can do it without looking. Because otherwise you have to like turn your whole face to see what is happening on the little pad. Whereas if all you want to do is turn up the heat, turn down the volume, do whatever, you can just do it with your knobs. And you don't have to get your eyes off the road necessarily, once you memorize where the knobs are. So I totally get that. There's definitely something to holding a Walkman in your hand and pressing play with your finger, right? It's just like this compact little brick, and then it starts playing music for you. I do get that, and I wish that more TV shows and movies and stuff kind of went that retro route. Like I would love for an episode of Doctor Who where they like show up and everything looks like it's running on Apple IIe's. They're like in a spaceship, but all of their monitors are like 4 inches across.
Yeah, 4x3, 4-inch
and green, right? Yeah. Slightly bubbled out and green, and it's just like characters, and they're like, our thrusters are down. It's like, how can you tell? Just like, brr, brr, brr. Just like all of these like little characters flying by.
We've only got 16K of RAM. How can we hold all of this computing power?
I mean, you guys remember the new, now old Battlestar Galactica show, the Edward James Olmos. They had a very good reason to dial back the technology level, right? So that was fun. That was an interesting way of doing it, definitely.
I guess, I don't know. Part of me loves this idea of I want to just put in a CD or I want to put in a cassette tape or whatever and hit that play. But at the same time, I agree with you on this desire to have the physical media, but at the same time, I don't want all that stuff cluttering up the space, right? I mean, I would rather have all of my music on my phone, every song ever, and not have to have, 32 CD racks of stuff. So that's the only one downside. But on the other hand, I kind of am really getting tired of the throwaway society that we have created. Of, it's busted, let's toss it and get a new one, as opposed to, is there a way we can fix this and maybe keep it working a little bit longer? And I kind of, like you with Doctor Who, I really could see us at a time period where, yes, we do have brand new technology, whatever that is, the latest Android device, right? But that sits right alongside an old VHS player. And and the VHS player is still doing the VHS thing, and you kind of have the best of both worlds because people just don't want to throw anything away. It's kind of like that one episode of Cowboy Bebop where they're trying to go find the VHS machine to get Faye Valentine her memories back.
Yep.
Yeah. Matthew, there is something that you might want to look into. It is no longer a vaporware product, but it is supposed to come out in 2027. It is the Slate. It is an EV truck that is customizable, but it is super bare bones. Like, it does not have a center iPad tablet device that you run everything on. All the windows are hand cranked windows. It is unfortunately not a metal truck because you can replace everything on it yourself. Like, if you want a red door, you can just buy the red door as an accessory and just slap it on and have a red door. You can turn this thing into an SUV if you want. It is very interesting from the concept. It is supposedly all made here in the United States. But just the fact that you get this base model and then you just customize it, it's all using the same frame, the same parts, and it's almost like snap on everything else that you want.
Mhm.
And it's supposed to be a sub $20,000 truck. And that's a pretty good deal in this day and age, especially for an EV vehicle. I know we're talking about nostalgia stuff, but I remember you said that you want a truck with hand cranks. And I bet if you wanted a two-tone brown and tan truck, you could get that
Sure, yeah.
with this thing. It's called the Slate.
Who's
Now,
it by?
it's by the company called Slate. Slate Auto, Slate.auto is where you want to go.
I don't trust them.
Well,
It's an anagram of Tesla.
well, it's not that, but it does have Jeff Bezos is one of the big investors in this company. He doesn't own the company, but he is a major investor in the company. So that may turn some people off. But this is a company I saw them back at CES either 2024 or early this year where they were demoing this. And I've seen them get more car aficionado people on board with what this car can do. And the fact that it is sub $20,000 for an EV and you can customize it however you like. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of people who are into this car.
I just feel like some of that money's going to somehow go to him.
Well, as investors always get their money back in some way, shape, or form. So that may be the thing that turns you off, but you might want to take a look at it and see if it's kind of like your kit car that you can put together and make it your very own. I'm sure you could even put a big old Herbie number 5 on the front if you wanted to do that. Hey, you know what? We love making this show for you each week, but unlike the superhero comics, we don't have billionaire benefactors funding our adventures. That's where you come in. Join our Patreon for just $5 a month, and you'll get bonus shows, early access, and other cool perks that make you feel like you're part of the Major Spoilers team. What are you waiting for? Head over to patreon.com/Major Spoilers and become a hero of the podcast today. This week, we are taking a look at C.O.W.L, Principles of Power, Volume 1 by Kyle Higgins and Alex Siegel with art by Rod Rice. This is released from Image Comics, and this is technically part of the Radiant Black universe, the Radiant Verse. And if you listen to the interview that I had earlier at the beginning of the year with Kyle Higgins before Radiant Black came back from its hiatus, you also know that C.O.W.L had its inspiration in a short film that you can find on YouTube if you dig around. And apparently you have to dig around because Rodrigo and I tried to find it again today and we couldn't. His student film that he did when he was in college called The League, which is a more modern take on the events that are happening in the C.O.W.L Volume 1. So what the C.O.W.L is, it stands for the Chicago Organized Workers League. And so at some point after World War II, the superheroes decided that they wanted to stick around in Chicago and presumably other cities as well to help out and work with the police. But they were going to be an independent organization that the city would pay. So it's just like if you had a union for people that drive buses or people that picked up garbage. C.O.W.L is this union of superheroes that go around and fight villains. And this story opens in 1962 when the final quote-unquote supervillain of Chicago has been brought down. Unfortunately, this supervillain is brought down in the middle of current contract negotiations between C.O.W.L and the city. And the city's like, well, we really don't have supervillains anymore. We could just contract hire out, heroes whenever we needed them for the police. We don't need to pay all these union dues and all of these things to contract the city to protect us. And C.O.W.L, which is led by, I forget his first name, Gray, who used to be a masked hero in the 1940s, fought in World War II, is like, nope, we want more money, and we have the power to keep this city safe. But there's a dark side to everything. What'd you think there, Matthew? You're a huge fan of the Radiant Verse.
I am. I knew about C.O.W.L before the Radiant Verse was kind of retroactively attached to it. And I feel like, Well, here's the thing. I feel like I understand the impetus behind it. I understand why this universe, why this creator wants to have C.O.W.L exist in this universe. I also feel like it is kind of a mistake, at least from my perspective.
I don't
I don't
necessarily think that C.O.W.L has to be part of the Radiant verse, but if the creator is like, no, this all fits together and shows how it fits together, then I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. And especially when you know about the history of how he went from his graduate school project, The League, to where we are with Radiant Black. This is part of that journey going to that point.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like, again, I want to say tonally, but that's not it either, because I feel like the tone is really solid. There is nothing in these 5 issues of C.O.W.L that is any way more cynical or nihilistic than things that Marshall says on a regular basis in every issue, or, moments where Radiant Red shows up and starts punching things really, really hard and things explode. But I feel like this story is kind of a grounded superhero story. It's that thing where all the superpowers kind of have a common origin. Everybody's powers tend to relatively fit within like a power scope or like a structure of it's on the harder side of the science fiction and the harder side of the drama part. It's not about a superhero who. It's about, hey, there's this guy and he's trying to feed his family and he's trying to make sure that he has a job. He's trying to make sure that other people like him have a union to protect them when they do their job and that they get paid and that they're not, Spider-Man around getting nothing out of it, having the police shoot at them. It all really kind of feels very grounded. Very realistic.
No, I agree with you. It does. And I wonder, Rodrigo, had we had superheroes appear for real in the 1940s and 50s and into the 60s, do you think that superheroes would have been? So this is almost the opposite of Marvel Knights Spider-Man, right? Where the government organized these supervillains to keep the superheroes in check and give them something to do. In this one, the government is like, yeah, we will hire you to protect us and we will give you what you want. What do you think that's how it would have turned out in real life, or do you think that everybody would just be a vigilante?
I don't know. I think and we've seen comics that explore all of this. I think there's like a very good chance that you could only be a superhero if you were working directly with the police or for the government or for the army, right? We've seen stuff like that. I think it would be interesting if like kind of none of this had happened and there were just like people who were like super strong and super fast or whatever, but like they're just normal citizens and they don't have super adventures. But that makes for a boring comic. So I'm not really I think, I mean, definitely this idea of like, okay, superheroes fighting this super powered war, because I'm gonna guess that like the World War II in this universe probably had some super science going on.
Probably they don't go too much into that, but yeah, that's pretty much assumed. Just imagine, Marvel and DC in World War II, but this is more masked men type stuff.
Yeah, it's like, well, then what are they going to do when they get back? Well, they're going to basically become cops, which is what a lot of soldiers end up doing, or some sort of security personnel because they already have all of those skills. It makes sense. I think it totally makes sense. And I think it also makes sense that they're weirdly redundant with police departments because government is like that. Cities are like that. Like if you look at the list of U.S. armed forces, there's like 8 different branches now. And a couple of them, you're like, well, why is this a separate branch from this one? And it's like, well, it's a separate branch from this one because somebody decided that it should be, right? And so it is interesting to have this separate agency that's a private agency.
Yes, C.O.W.L is a private agency
that functions kind of parallel to the police. So it is. I mean, it's interesting. It's complicated. I mean, I think it definitely could develop this way.
It is interesting because some of the other things that we've looked at this year. So I've already addressed. We've got C.O.W.L. This is the city contracting a private organization and doing contract negotiations with them each year. You've got the vigilantes, which we normally see, your Batmans, your Spider-Mans, those kind of people. Then you have something like what we saw in Marvel Knights Spider-Man that we talked about last episode. And then you have kind of something that is what we see in My Hero Academia, where you get to be a license, but only if you've gone through the proper training to be a hero. But everybody has powers. That's what triggered it, is you saying, well, it'd be very different if everybody had powers. And in My Hero Academia,
people don't.
Do that. So I think that's kind of interesting in those kind of four situations. Is there another situation where you would have heroes in the world? I guess the fifth one would be it just evolves to chaos between gods fighting gods and regular humans live in terror of
kind of like a kingdom come situation.
Yeah.
You get like the gang thing, or like the medieval houses warring, the Game of Thrones thing, which is kind of the same stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen sort of like post-apocalyptic superheroes too, where like everything just gets out of hand. Like, I mean, not that it was
type stuff.
Old Man Logan is probably the most famous example of something like that. Yeah.
And that's interesting.
Kind of where everything just devolves.
I would like to think that we would find ourselves somewhere between My Hero Academia and C.O.W.L. But more realistically, I think we would just end up with vigilantes who don't want to unmask because they're all secret libertarians. That's probably what it would be.
And that's my biggest problem, is when you say, hey, what would superheroes be like in the real world? The answer is simple. They wouldn't. The real world would not allow for superheroes of any kind, whether they be masked, unmasked, government run. The whole point of the power fantasy is that the superhero can't happen. The superhero won't happen, and that's kind of why we do it. And so I feel like this kind of book definitely has its place, and I feel like it's always fun to see what trips people up. I feel like these stories always have something that trips people up when you're, that professional super team, or you're like the big deal super. Even if you look at like the celebrities, like your rising stars, your celebrity superhero kind of joints, there's always something that falls apart, and there's always something in human nature that it's either selfish, or it's cowardly, or it's weird and lying and trying to make itself look more than it is, the self-aggrandizement thing. Whereas traditionally a Captain America is like, no, I'm nothing special. I mean, I'm 6'4" with a 97-inch chest.
Captain America is a government employee, right? Because he's a
I mean sometimes.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Rodrigo?
So there's also like the potential of like corporate superheroes, right? Like The Boys, where where basically you kind of can be a superhero, but mostly only if you have a sponsor of some kind, because superheroes of the level of that we see in The Boys cause a lot of collateral damage. Other people get killed and stuff. So you need Stark behind you, right? You need Vote American. You need, I don't know, RAND. What's a DC super company that pays for stuff? I don't know. Wayne, of course. Yeah.
Wayne Tech, or Booster Gold trying to do his independent thing, or
the idea that superheroes just wouldn't be allowed, that they would basically be outlawed and persecuted. That's the X-Men, right? Unfortunately, the X-Men is the X-Men is sometimes not that. And that's fine. The X-Men has been around for a long time. There's lots of X-Men books. I find that the X-Men is frequently just very contaminated by the rest of the Marvel universe, where like their themes don't quite work, because over here everybody loves, the Silver Surfer this week. He's being nice. and so all the mutants are like, yeah, but why do you hate us, right?
Yeah. So, as Matthew kind of alluded to, that there's always going to be something that is going to bring this kind of an organization down. And it turns out that the final supervillain that they were fighting was using some maybe old C.O.W.L technology. And that sends a couple of heroes down a path that maybe they don't want to go down as they try to discover what is going on that gives C.O.W.L a hand or gives them the cards that they're holding in this negotiation. And we kind of find out at the end of this, spoiler alert, instead of the government funding the superheroes, C.O.W.L is making sure that super villains stay somewhat manageable, but somewhat out there so that they can continue to get money from the city of Chicago. That's kind of the big reveal at the end of this. The story along the way, though, does look at things like, hey, I'm with C.O.W.L, but my kid thinks I'm a big loser because I don't have a superhero name and I don't have, my only superpower is that I can aim a gun really good. Or you have the sexism that arrives in the 1960s where you have, what is her name? It's not Psyche, but she basically has telekinetic powers and she is just looked at as a supermodel. And every time she tries to interject to try to say things, everybody, the men of society are just like, oh, no, just sit there and look pretty. Let the important people handle the important things kind of stuff. So you do see
Radia.
Oh, yeah. Radia, that is her name. Yeah. So you do see these cracks into society, but underneath it's always icky and sticky.
Sure.
I love that cartoon.
Yes. They were right after Heckle and Jekyll. So yeah. So what'd you think of the some of the storylines and the underlying bomb moment? Really? Wow, fascinating.
I mean,
no, it's funny because Matthew and I, we are always on the same vibe. Either we both jump in immediately, or we're both waiting for the other one.
Yeah. Here's my thing: the point where a character reveals themselves to be a dirtbag, or a murderer, or on the take, or whatever. You want a Martin Scorsese kind of thing. You want a, oh my God, this guy was bad all along.
Mm-hmm.
And the big one in this particular arc, when, Pierce, the super detective, I love the fact that he has no code name. He just
I like also that he
kind of looks like Basil Rathbone.
I was going to say he looks not like Basil Rathbone. I was going to say he looks like Sinestro.
Yeah, or Vincent Price.
Or what's his name? Dirk Dastardly.
Yeah, Vincent Price. Vincent Price was what I thought.
Yeah, he looks like a 40s day player, somebody who always gets like character roles, and he looks like a guy that you would pay to play Sherlock Holmes. And in real life, he's like, well, I'm going to be Sherlock Holmes. And then, of course, the Superman type, Arclight, who is probably the closest thing we see to a Superman analog, flies, cape, big letter on his chest, just nukes his face, and, carves scab into his flesh. And I'm just like, that is a really cool moment that I would have liked better if it didn't feel like Arclight was a scumbag from the drop. And that I think is, that's part and parcel of a realistic story, is Arclight is a dirtbag in real life. And then people see him and they think, oh, he's a shining sentinel of liberty. That's cool. That's a really neat, and they play it really well. I feel like the art handles it really well. And maybe I'm just genre savvy to the point where felt like I was waiting for that to happen.
And it's not even that he is the bad guy of the story, right? It's the Sparrow or whatever his name is, Gray, the head of C.O.W.L. He's the real bad guy in this whole thing, and he's just convinced one of his problem people to see things his way, Arclight his way. It would be more shocking had we not already read The Boys. It would be more shocking if we hadn't already read Irredeemable. It would be more shocking if we hadn't read Kingdom Come, if we hadn't read Dark Knight Returns. So a lot of that kind of stuff is almost baked into kind of like what you guys were talking about last week, the cynical take on the superhero.
And this came out in 2014 at a time when I remember reading a couple of issues of C.O.W.L, actually contemporaneously, and being like, "Huh, this is interesting." The art didn't necessarily speak to me, but I feel like it's got some oomph behind it. But I remember thinking that the main thing about C.O.W.L that bugged me is the same thing that bugs me about every spy story since about 1992, 93. All of the spies are corrupt. All of the spy agencies are corrupt. They always have been corrupt from the jump. Shield was infiltrated by Hydra from the beginning. All the spies are scuzzballs, and all of the spies are lying, two-faced jerks. This feels like these are characters who are superheroes. They're heroes for hire. Your Luke Cage types, your Super Snipes, people who want money to do their superhero stuff, have traditionally been crapped on. When Luke Cage started doing it in 73, in universe and a little bit out, it was kind of a thing, It was, oh
Sure.
wow, how dare he?
Yeah.
But he's got to pay his rent. He's got that theater down in Hell's Kitchen. He's got
Yeah, I
stuff
mean,
he's got to do.
he goes all the way to Latvia to bust up Dr. Doom's horn because he refused to pay him $200. I think is how much he owed him.
He owed him $200, which in 1972 is today the equivalent of $473 million.
Yes,
because of Ford's economy. But there is, I think, a baked-in cynicism to these are people who are ostensibly superheroes, but they are clock punchers, or they're professional heroes. We meet Arclight in a strip club trying to, pick up on girls going, hey, you know who I am? The cape comes off, baby. And one of the subplots is Radia gets a lot of money to pose for not Playboy, but totally Playboy, you guys. I like these bits and pieces, but when it's put all together, I feel like my initial thought was, this is really cynical. This is really like dark, and it's not necessarily deconstructive, because I don't know what it's trying to like deconstruct, but it feels like I'm going to do a very realistic hero story. And there are some brand new beats in here, but I feel like we've seen a lot of this before.
Part of me when I read this, and Rodrigo, I don't want to block you out here, so jump in here right after I'm done. Part of me is, I have no problem with unions, right? I think unions are great. It's the reason why we have the weekend. It's the reason why we have the Labor Day. It's the reason why we get all the benefits that we do is thanks to labor unions. At the same time, in 1962, in Mayor Daley, Chicago, there is so much corruption going on. And at the time, so much corruption in unions that I found it hard to root for the side of the heroes in this book. I was kind of rooting on the side of the city going, we really need to cut costs. We've got to do these other things. That was one of my big things in there. So if you're looking at deconstructions, or you're looking for, some reason to like these heroes, for me, I was kind of down on them. Well, first of all, I've seen the League, so I kind of know what happens. But at the same time, I was kind of like, knowing what's going on with unions at this time, when they were super strong, but also super corrupt. I shouldn't say unions are super corrupt. There was a lot of corruption in the unions.
There were a lot of corrupt unions.
Yes, I really had a tough time rooting for C.O.W.L. Rodrigo, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't know that you were supposed to root for C.O.W.L. I think so. When I read through this, I've never read any Radiant Black, and I've never read anything else that happens in this universe, I don't think. So I read through this and I was like, yep, this sure felt like a prequel loaded up with all the stuff that is going to be interesting and exciting later. And there was none of that here, right? Like, this book spends a lot of time in boardrooms and meetings and getting into the heads of these morally gray characters. Some of them start moonlighting as vigilante type superheroes, and you're like, okay, but like, what benefit are they actually drawing from it? Or like, and it's kind of like, oh well, these two characters that were kind of at odds are now friends. Is sort of what you get out of it. I felt like
we
like
probably should
there's a
have
lot.
read. We probably should have read both volumes of this because there only are 2 volumes in this story, and so we probably could have gotten the complete thing. But we just did read 12 back-to-back issues of
Yeah, I
Spider-Man.
mean, if you if I'm just like, what happens in this volume, right? What happens in this volume is like, yeah, there's like all of these negotiations. The superheroes union is trying to get more money to protect the city. There's some corruption in there. There's corruption in the government too. The government's like, well, all of you've beaten up the sinister Brotherhood of Evil Morlocks, so we don't need you anymore. And then there's an altercation between the police and the superheroes, and basically things fall apart because of that. Where there's like casualties and stuff. I would say those are the major beats, aside from the fact that it starts out with like the capture of that final supervillain, which also causes a lot of physical damage and injuries and deaths. But it's like, okay, so that's the stuff that happens, but it like happens at like the either end of this story, right? We don't spend a lot of time. It's like basically once that happens, everybody's like, oh, well, Arclight, looks like your union's cooked.
Yeah.
Like, looks like this isn't going to happen. And he's like, hey, man, hey, journalist contact, can you help me? And they're like, nope, looks like you're screwed. Right. It's like, here's the fall of the superheroes union. Just like, to me, a like painfully realistic take on like on government, right? On unions and government. And I'm like, I cannot recall one thing about this book that was fun.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Like, I read
This
that whole
feels
thing,
like-
and I appreciate having read it around Memorial Day, or not Memorial Day, Labor Day.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that gave it something. But
I guess if I were to say, this is the equivalent of The Wire. Everybody loves The Wire, except this is kind of like not the worst season of The Wire, but the second worst season of The Wire. Which for me, the second worst season of The Wire is when they're in the school system and the docks. That whole storyline, which was just kind of like, okay, whatever. I see what you're trying to do here. This is kind of like that. You're getting some superhero stuff. You're also getting some thriller spy stuff with trying to solve this mystery. But then you're also bogged down with bureaucracy. For those of you that are big fans of contract law, man, you are going to love C.O.W.L. or contract, even the contract negotiations.
Call it tort.
Yes, there you go.
But
and
they couldn't find a good anagram.
And you know what? Like, I know that there are, like, we had talked about Patrick Willems, like, documents movies thing. Like, there are ways to make bureaucratic and investigative things interesting, even though in real life they're massively dull, right? It's just like, it's like too real. Like, two people or like 5 people sitting around a table, 2 sides to the conflict. And it's kind of like, well, we want this much money. And it's like, oh, we can't go any more than this, and like just having those negotiations seems to take like so much of it. Getting to the point of, oh my gosh, we C.O.W.L are the ones who have been kind of funding the villains or something like that, or they've been using our technology. Takes a really long time to get to, takes a really long time to resolve. The moment that it starts to resolve, the person in charge is like, hey, so you figured that out, well, don't worry about it. Like, and also don't worry about it because there aren't villains anymore. Like, it's just when we get to the very end and the one guy tells the other guy, we're going to have to be superheroes again. I'm like, there is a reason why this book is like, I haven't read any of the other books, but I assume other books allude to the way things were in this story, because when you sit down and actually write it out, it's just so dull.
Yeah, so just a little spoiler alert, C.O.W.L does not play a big role in Radiant
Oh, okay.
Black. One of the characters shows up and what are the two main heroes in
Nathan and Marshall.
Nathan and Marshall are huge fans of all things C.O.W.L. So there's C.O.W.L movies, C.O.W.L TV shows, C.O.W.L comic books, and they are into that stuff.
See again, then I'm like, okay, I didn't know that going in. It's like, I if that is the way that things are, then I can be like, I see what they were doing. What they were doing was, here are these characters that see C.O.W.L as this aspirational thing or as a super cool thing, and as it turns out, it was dumb and boring. And but now you're writing a book that's boring, right? I know that wasn't the intent. Maybe that's a little
Yeah. So, and also
mean-spirited.
C.O.W.L came before Radiant Black. So I really think that I probably should have just said, hey, we're going to read both volumes because that will have the complete story. I think, get to, we've had our fun and games part of the story, and now we are into the hardcore trials in the volume 2, and we have to get to the third act. So we're basically in the middle of the second act when this volume ends. And considering that there's only 5 more books, I think the complete standalone story probably is more fulfilling than just getting a half or a taste of what we got here. That being said, final thoughts from me is I kind of enjoy the politics side of anything. I love the politics in Star Wars, and I love the politics in this book and how these negotiations are going and how they're falling apart and the reveals of who is really the bad guy, those kinds of things. I like that kind of stuff in politics, in my stories. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but I enjoy it. That being said, I agree with you, Rodrigo, that this first volume shouldn't just be a standalone thing. You really should. I know they haven't released a compendium of all 10 issues, all 10 issues. But I have a feeling that this is something that you need to read volumes 1 and 2 to fully appreciate. I love the art in this book. I like the story. I like the writing. I enjoy the characters. I think there's maybe 2 characters you could remove from this book and it would tighten everything up a little bit more. So my bottom line for C.O.W.L is, if you're a fan of Radiant Black and you're wondering why C.O.W.L appears in Radiant Black, here's a book that you can go and pick up and get a little background on that. If you're a fan of Kyle Higgins and you want to know even more about C.O.W.L, go and check out The League, his short film. I'm giving this, a check out from the library, a borrow it book. I mean, not a buy, but a borrow. Matthew, final thoughts from you.
C.O.W.L is, I think, the sweet spot for you as a reader to love C.O.W.L is you do have to have kind of a grounding in the tropes of the superhero story. You have to know XYZ does this, and then the superhero traditionally does this. And that's why this story's, its conventions and the changes work. If you get past a certain point of that where, God help you, you're me, and you feel like this is a take that I've seen bits and pieces of before, and it does kind of come together in a way that feels more didactic than, kind of excitement, then, if you don't know enough, it's not going to work for you. If you know too much, like I do, it may not work for you. I would agree with Steven. This is definitely a check it out. If it hits you in that sweet spot, I think it's probably going to be because you are that particular nerd who loves a guy with a solar wind costume and also, the incredible movements of the trade consortium. And, if that's your thing, this is pretty solid comics. I don't mean to say that it's bad, but I do agree with Rodrigo that the pacing feels dull.
Yeah. Rodrigo, final thoughts from you.
Yeah. It's definitely a pass for me. I'm not saying that I showed up wearing my like propeller beanie and was like, oh boy, a superhero comic. I hope there's lots of flying and punching. Like you can do lots of stuff with superheroes. We've seen superhero books where they stay in their civvies the whole way through, right? And like nobody throws a punch and it can still be a good book. This book is trying to do several things and sort of successfully creating this like corrupt world of politics while completely like forgetting to make us care about any of these characters. And although the art is good and I liked it, it doesn't help this book in particular, I felt. It does kind of give it that grit of like 60s, 70s, sort of like,
style.
You know what I mean? Like that dirt splatter kind of, yeah. So it does do that, but it's like just because you have one thing 60s and one thing 60s and you put it together doesn't mean that they work together necessarily. It's a pass for me. Sorry, I don't mean to be a big downer about it, but I just was not feeling this book.
Dear listeners, how will Rodrigo find out about about Radiant Black next week? Oh, you're just going to have to tune in then, because that is where we are wrapping it up for this issue. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you, Matthew, for being a part of the show this week. Dear listener, if you found value in the show, we would love for you to join us over on our Patreon page, where you can find even more fun, including the Major Spoilers Podcast pre-show, where I not only got monkey pawed once this week, but twice. You can find out more at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Until next time, remember, we know that you love comics, and we do too, and we will talk with you soon.
If I had the X-ray vision of a Superman, I could save a few bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the stand. But although every other page would be backwards, I suppose I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew, he kicked my butt out on the corner. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Think about a better way. If I was hulking green or gray, I could just bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little meat would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you ever tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would I back and board my comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. If I'm Stark Raven, rich like a man of iron, I might not be surprised to find that I might actually have the heart cold to follow an entire storyline. But would I really even need to read up on all those escapades? I mean, who needs such distractions when your sister's such a babe? But the downside is such a beast. Being shot up in a fun, be in the Middle East with a gang sign throwing soldier. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah. What a major spoiler. Whoa. What a major spoiler.
This podcast is copyright 2025 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.